Game theory. Is it a game? Is it a theory? Keep watching if you're in for a ride. Game theory is the study of strategic decision making. This is where situations are called games and the participants are called the players. In particular, it studies how people, companies, or even nations determine strategies under different situations in the face of competing moves or strategies acted out by other players. Knowledge is not enough to ensure that the choice you chose was the best choice. It is the ability to consider every option and its consequences that will enable one to discern the best course of action. In this video, we will tackle a specific type of game theory. Non-cooperative game theory. This type of game theory covers competitive social interactions, where there will be winners and there will be losers. This promotes competition between players, where they are urged to take the course of action that will benefit them the most at all costs. To further understand the essence of non-competitive game theory, I'll introduce a famous manifestation called the prisoner's dilemma. Let's consider player 1 and player 2 at the prisoner's dilemma. Assume player 1, Gi-hun, and player 2, Sebyok, are a team of con artists that were caught. Gi-hun is in charge of the strategic planning of their heists, investigating the profiles of their targets, and provides Sebyok with the information. He works separately from Sebyok, but he trusts her completely in the field. Sebyok is in charge of the on-site operations. She is the one who charms their targets into trusting them and executes all of Gi-hun's operation plans. Illustrating the prisoner's dilemma using a table, the two were caught and briefed separately. The authorities think that they already laid the groundwork for their next operation, so they want a confession from them. They were given two choices, to confess or to not confess. If both of them stay silent, they will only spend 1 year in prison. If one of them were to confess, the other gets to spend 3 years in prison. If both of them confess, they get to spend 2 years in prison. This introduces options for them. You would think that it's best for them to go and cooperate, but from an individual standpoint, why go for 1 year in prison when you can aim for roaming free? This is game theory's solution for both of them to confess and rat each other out. Which leads us to the concept of Nash equilibrium. Pioneered by John Forbes Nash Jr., Nash equilibrium is a list of strategies with one strategy per player, such that each strategy is the best response to the other strategies on the list. A player in the game reached Nash equilibrium if they reached a point where no player can reach a better payoff by changing strategies. In the case of Gi-hun and Sebyok, confessing meant that they can avoid the worst possible case scenario no matter what the other player chooses. To further understand this concept, let us play the game of Squid Game. This is Squareman, one of the 3 guides of the game. So Squareman, how is Squid Game played? Squid Game is a game of attrition and wit. In order for one to survive, one must gather their knowledge and courage to attain victory. The rules are simple. Be the last prisoner standing. We have gathered prisoners all over the country to participate in this game. You may see familiar faces. Yes, with Gi-hun and Sebyok. All eliminated players will spend years in prison, depending on which stage of the game are they eliminated. Are you ready for the ride? The game starts in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Squid Game, players. Whether this game will serve you well or will make you serve is up to you. This part of Squid Game is called red light, green light. The game is simple. Look down when the doll says green light. This is a non-cooperative game. Each player are to fend for themselves. Survive until you are the last prisoner standing. Player 3. You are charged with robbery that has garnered you 5 years in prison. Being the first to be eliminated, you are sentenced to 10 years instead. This is not fair! Player 4. You are charged with fraud that has garnered you 7 years in prison. Being the second to be eliminated, you are sentenced to 12 years instead. I cannot accept this! Player 2. You are charged with libel that has garnered you 8 years in prison. Being the third to be eliminated, you are sentenced to 9 years instead. Well, I guess I was better off than other players. Player 1. You are charged with embezzlement that has garnered you 5 years in prison. Being the winner of this game, you are free to go and free of charge. It was simple. This game was so simple since there's a trick. Now I am free to roam wherever I want. You may think that games are based on luck, but you are wrong. Games can be won strategically, using the concept of game theory. Player 1 was really smart, but how exactly did he win the game? It's pretty simple if you were to think about it. The players were given 2 choices, to look up or to look down. They have no way of knowing when the doll will say green light or say red light. So what is the best course of action? The game only mentioned one rule, to look down when the doll says red light. Since the doll said green light, whether the player looks down or looks up, he cannot be eliminated as long as the doll says green light. If the doll says red light, the only option where the player is safe is when they are looking down. Hence, as long as the player looks down, they can arrive at favorable circumstances regardless of what the other players chose. Let me explain this the way the prisoner dilemma was explained. Comparing the last two standing players, player 1 and player 2, regardless of what they pick, as long as it's green light, they will be able to stay in the game. However, this is not the case when it is red light. You can see that the consequences vary in this scenario. Remember that red light does not permit you to look up. Thus, in this case, the best course of action that they should take is to look down. Looking at the two possible scenarios, player 1 is able to win the game because he deduced that looking down is the best course of action to win the game. Thus, the player 1 reached Nash equilibrium regardless if player 2 decides to look down or look up. Player 1 is still safe because he too decides to look down. I hope you enjoyed this presentation about non-cooperative game theory. It's a shame you were not able to meet Triangle Man. May this video help you in understanding the application of game theory in everyday decision making. Oh, and to remind you, be aware of the strange signals that invites you to play the actual Squid Game. You'll never know what they have in store.